Happy Friday, everyone. Welcome back to Tim Travels. I am your host, Terry. I haven't heard from Tim in a few days. I don't know if that's due to any power problems or he's just having a lot of fun somewhere that's warm, hopefully. So coming at you on a Friday, it's kind of a grab bag today, and we'll get to that in a second. I just want to update you on where my travels took me today. I was in Pennsylvania for part of the day, back in Western Maryland, running out the Interstate 68, which, by the way, is not a bad option if you got to run into southern or south central PA like Harrisburg or whatever. It's not a toll road. It's actually, the road surface itself is pretty good. Obviously, you're going to get into some big hills, mountains in Western Maryland and into West Virginia, but it's a nice workaround for the PA Turnpike. Both Maryland and West Virginia do a pretty good job on the roads out here, and it's not a bad drive. So I just happened to be in Cumberland, Maryland today. I've been to Cumberland dozens of times over the years. I used to come to court out here in Allegheny County. Cumberland's the county seat of Allegheny County, Maryland. It's not the farthest west county. That's Garrett County, which is way out on the western edge of Maryland, like basically south of Pittsburgh. But Cumberland's kind of an interesting place. And you know, just in my last video, I talked about two cities that were called the Queen City: Charlotte, North Carolina, and Cincinnati, where I'd been. Well, it turns out that Cumberland, Maryland, and I also mentioned that there were a bunch of other cities or towns called Queen City or Queentown. And so Cumberland was called the Queen City at one time because in the early 1800s, Cumberland was the second largest city in the state of Maryland, behind, of course, Baltimore. And so that's how they got the nickname the Queen City. It's definitely not the second largest city in Maryland anymore. It was a transportation hub. It was kind of a jumping off point for exploration of the Ohio Territory, the Western Reserve, you know, and places west. It's on the Potomac River, even though there's a river named the Cumberland. Cumberland, Maryland is named after an English royal, the Duke of Cumberland. So anyway, that's a little bit about Cumberland, Maryland. It's still kind of a transportation hub in that, you know, Interstate 68 runs through here. CSX Railroad on the old Chesapeake and Ohio lines has quite a few trains go through here. So it's, you know, it still has its place. So today I wanted to talk about a couple of things. You know, everybody's been talking about the weather. I guess all I could say about that is that, you know, it kind of comes with the territory. Sometimes we have easy winters, sometimes we have hard, crazy winters. I grew up in a place that it snows a ton. It's not something I'm not used to. But I do want to share a couple of tips about driving in winter weather. You know, when I was getting my CDL, one of our instructors was always fond of saying everything we do in a truck we do slowly. And that's never more important than it is during the winter. I still, you know, I see people when it's obvious that conditions are less than optimal. I see trucks tailgating the crap out of cars and other trucks. I see trucks making lane changes like they're in a NASCAR race. And, you know, it's just, you never know when you're going to exceed the coefficient of friction, which is the measurement of how, basically how much your tires are sticking to the road. So a couple of things, a couple of little pointers that I think I learned from my dad, who was a very good driver, and I don't ever recall him having a wreck, but he you know, he was pretty safety conscious, but still seemed to drive pretty fast. The first thing is when you see those ridges of slush or snow in the road, when you turn to cross one of those, you need to do it slowly. You need to do it at a very low angle, because that pile of slush is going to move your steers, and you want to get into it a little bit at a time. It's just like if you've ever used a chainsaw, you know, sometimes you got to work through the log you're cutting, or through the trunk or whatever of the tree. You can't just like put it on high and just try to blast through it like it's a stick of butter. It doesn't work that way. And it's the same thing crossing those ridges of slush or snow. Slower is better. Even if you're gonna pass somebody, coast through those piles without, you know, being on the pedal. Then once you're completely in that left-hand lane, then you can accelerate to go past the vehicle you want to pass. And the same thing when you come back over. Don't stay on the pedal while you try to cross back into that other lane. Get far enough ahead that you can get off the pedal, coast through slowly to get back into the right-hand lane, then accelerate away from the vehicle that you just passed. People that whip it into that lane next to them, they're just asking to lose control. At any time, even on dry pavement, you whip it over, you're asking to lose control. It's easy to roll a truck. But in the wintertime, you don't, you know, I see it all the time where I see people that end up in the ditch or the median because they get into that snow or that slush that's on the shoulder, or, you know, one side of the road, and it will pull your wheel to the direction that it's in. And the same thing can happen when you're changing lanes. So just be aware of that. And then the other thing, and I don't know why this is so mysterious, but you know, we always hear about, like, and by the way, I don't like the term black ice, because ice isn't black, it's clear, or it's translucent. Pavement might be black, but the ice isn't. But anyway, so when people can't see ice, they always say, well, you know, it looked like it was water. Here's an easy, like, thing, and I keep this in mind constantly. It's constantly running through my mind in the wintertime. Dull is good, meaning when you don't see shiny pavement, you're probably okay. But when you see shiny pavement, you have to immediately know whether there's water coming off that pavement. If it's shiny and nobody's throwing crap up on your windshield, it's probably ice, and you just need to, like, get off it and not use the brake and maybe wait somewhere. If it's throwing off water and, you know, you're constantly using your windshield wipers, going through a gallon of washer fluid, then you're probably fine too, because that shine is coming from the water and not from ice. But if it's not throwing off anything, it's probably ice, and you just need to figure out something else to do for a while. Okay, so that's a couple of Terry's winter tips from the Tim Travel Weather Center. So as I've mentioned in the past, you know, I practiced law for a number of years, and so I often think about liability and you know, assigning fault, claims, etc. And there's a lot of misinformation out there that truckers are in possession of. There are a lot of people that know just enough about the law to be dangerous. And, you know, there are a lot of smart people that think they know the law. And as I used to tell people, you know, I think I'm a bright guy, but I don't do my kids' dental work. And what I meant by that, or what I still mean by that, is that I was trained to do something, but it wasn't dental work on kids. That's why I would take my kids to the dentist. There are a lot of smart people, but they haven't been trained in the law. And, you know, knowing 80% of the law is good, but it's often not very good. So I want to talk about decisions that you need to make before you need to make a decision under pressure. And what's prompting me to talk about this is I just saw a story on CDL Life, which is kind of a online news magazine, which, by the way, has a good article. If you just go to, I think it's CDLLife.com, they have a complete, fairly comprehensive list of all the truck stop closures or other issues that are affecting sorry about that, truck stops around the country. So if you're wondering, if you're looking on, say, one of the truck stop apps, or like, what is it? I can't think of the other trucker app that everybody uses that tells how much parking space there is. But CDL Life has a good update on all those truck stop closures, truck stops that don't have fuel, etc., truck stops that don't have power. But there's an article in there about a driver of a truck hauling, I think it's wood chips, out in Washington State. And it was daylight, 11:20 in the morning, and a pickup truck apparently drops some pallets in the road. And the driver of the truck swerves so violently to avoid these pallets that he rolls his truck over and dumps all the wood chips down an embankment, or down into the ditch. So he wrecks his truck and, damages his trailer and loses his cargo because some pickup truck dropped some pallets in the road. And what I said earlier about making decisions before you're under stress, before you're in the moment, is important for truck drivers. There are certain things that you need to just decide to do when the moment comes. And in my opinion, one of those decisions you need to make is, what will you try to avoid in the road, and what will you just hit or run over? And the reason this is important is because it clearly can be a life-altering decision. It certainly can be a financial hardship decision, or lack of financial hardship. So I don't know how many pallets it was, but suppose that for a moment it was a stack of 10 pallets. The first thing I'll say, and I don't want to really Monday morning quarterback this because I wasn't there and I didn't see it happen, but I do think that if you're really paying attention and you know what the Smith system is, you're gonna see, unless it's like a blind curve, a blind hill, or something like that, you should have a plan to avoid taking violent action that rolls your truck just because some guy drops some pallets in the road. Now, we all get surprised. But so supposing for a moment this guy got surprised, and I'll assume he did based on what he did, he got surprised by this debris in the road. What we as drivers need to do, because we make instantaneous decisions all the time, but what we need to do is we need to have already decided pallets in the road, I'm not going to risk my life and my livelihood and my equipment over some pallets in the road, right? I'm going to hit those pallets if I cannot safely get around them, but I'm not going to roll my truck for some pallets. And here's why. Worst case scenario, I flatten some tires, I puncture some tires. If I have a camera in my truck and we know that somebody dropped that, you know, I probably can file an insurance claim. Not saying that they're going to be able to find out who dropped the pallets, because the police supposedly are looking for this pickup truck driver. But you have to make a decision. And the reason I mentioned liability and stuff like that is that, you know, I see drivers who sometimes there's gonna be an accident. Somebody pulls out in front of you. Somebody, you know, turns left in front of you. Or even somebody just, and this is something that I don't think a lot of car drivers get. The bigger an object is, the faster, the slower it appears to be moving when it's moving. I know we've all had this happen. A truck is coming on the freeway. We move into the left lane, but there's a line of cars behind the truck. You already know what's going to happen, right? Some knucklehead is going to think that he's driving a top fuel funny car and he can just accelerate around that truck and get up to the speed that you're doing before you even get close to him. But big objects don't look like they're moving as fast as they are. So here's a question. Suppose if for a moment somebody just swings right in front of you and you're going to hit them unless you run off the road. My question to you is, have you decided whose life is more valuable? You know, I don't know who's in that car, but I know who's in my truck. It's a husband. It's a father of 6 kids. It's somebody that has a few good friends, and it's a wage earner. It's somebody that's supporting a family. Now, I don't know if the person in that car, you know, I don't want to say my life is more valuable than that person in that car, but there's certain times when I'm willing to risk that. And by the way, let me just disclaim this. Again, this is just me. It's not my company. This is my opinion, not my company, you know, not, you know, the state that issued me a driver's license. This is just my opinion. Okay, but there are all sorts of scenarios where you have to think about beforehand what you're going to do when, you know, the proverbial shit hits the fan. And you can disagree with what I'm saying, and you may be like, hey, you know, my life's not as important as somebody else's. Now, here's the distinction, and here's the difference. When an accident is clearly going to be your fault, like you run a stop sign, right? Or you're doing 65 and a 50 and are fiddling with your CB radio and don't notice a stopped school bus. You basically got to eat the trees, buddy. That's, you know, you got to take the hit. And you got to do whatever you can to prevent a collision. Even if it means rolling your truck or driving into the woods or hitting a phone pole. But if it's a situation where you wouldn't be at fault, and that's what I mean by a lot of truck drivers worry too much about who's going to be at fault, and oftentimes have wrong information, because there are different negligence regimes depending on the state you're in. And so it's important to make those decisions ahead of time. but it's also important to just pay attention to what you're doing. Oftentimes I see, you know, there'll be something in the road. Armchair, sofa, you know, super single that rolled off of somebody's rim. And we, you know, as truck drivers, usually, you know, if we're paying attention, we can come up with a plan. Okay, I'm gonna go right onto the shoulder. I'm gonna move into the left-hand lane. We know who's around us. We're doing our vehicle checks. We're looking in our mirrors. We are cognizant of the situation, and we've prepared ahead of time to take action to prevent damage to our truck or some other event. But I urge you to really think about that stuff. You know, we see a lot of bad weather lately. You know, think about what's my strategy. You know, what am I gonna do when, you know, in the 3 seconds I have to make a decision before the shit hits the fan. If you do that, you will be, I think, a better truck driver, because what you're doing, if you go through this mental exercise, is you're assessing risk before the event occurs. And that's what professionals do. I was in the military. We did a lot of dangerous things. A lot of you guys, gals, have probably been in the military. You did dangerous things. What do we do in the military? We assess the risk beforehand as much as we can, right? And we also assess the benefit, right? It's just, you know, risk versus reward. So the guy that dumped his load of wood chips out, you know, I think what happened there is going to be more expensive than just, say, replacing a couple of steer tires or even 4 tires. And, you know, and he could have killed himself. And so it's not worth it to hurt yourself. You're driving a truck for a reason. And whatever the reason is, it's a good enough reason to preserve yourself and you know, take the time to do this mental exercise. So I know that's kind of a heavy topic, you know, because we are talking life and death, but I hope, you know, everybody just takes a second to think about it. It would be really great if we have a lot of comments and kind of debate on this, because there aren't really right or wrong answers. It's just what somebody wants to do. And if you have general questions about liability, you know, I'll try to address them. You know, I'm not on this channel to practice law, and I certainly don't know the laws in every state, but I can point you in the right direction if you want to check, because believe it or not, it's pretty easy to find any law you want, just, you know, going on the internet. So anyway, everybody be safe, have a good weekend. I'll probably come back at you later this weekend when I'm out in the Midwest, and hopefully winter will be on its way out in the next little bit. But take care, be safe, and we'll see you next time.